Hello, everyone, and welcome to my second lesson plan presentation. Please ignore the sunbeam that's in my face. I was trying to get it out of the way and I can't. Anyway, moving on. So I'm just going to highlight the different areas just to show that every area of the rubric has been covered. So as you can see, I have my title. It's going to be about balanced and unbalanced forces. And the red is a disclaimer just saying that this will be taught over 2 days because this lesson plan uses the flipped model. Let me move forward so that maybe I get out of the sunbeam. So through using the flipped model, I would have to do like an A day, B day situation. So I have 4 competencies from the DBU in task standards that I aligned my lesson with. And then I also have my goal, which comes straight from a science TEKS. I have the whole TEKS number there. And I also included a technology TEKS just to make sure that I was following it word for word. And our objective, of course, is that we will be able to identify and describe the change in position of an object when acted on by outside forces. And then I also have how they're going to do that. So they're going to create a video of an experiment and they're going to use a collaborative Google Docs lab tracker. So as they completed the activity, they would all have their Google Docs open so that they could all see the differences they were making, and each group would have it open so that they could jump in. So each group would have their own collaborative Google Docs they're working on together, so that instead of having like one pencil and one paper having to pass it around or everyone has their own, it can really be a collaborative experience. So as we know, we always have to have value and importance. So my value and importance is that they'll be able to understand the world around them better and appreciate everything that goes on around them whenever they play sports. So like balls having to come back to the ground because of the unbalanced force of gravity. If you hit it harder, it goes farther. They're going to understand that, and through understanding that, hopefully make better decisions in sports to be able to win games and things like that. So I have all my materials needed for the students and the teacher. The teacher use of technology, you'll be using a computer, a smartboard, and a Kahoot to check student understanding. Also the Google Docs you will be using as an assessment. Students would be using iPads and Google Docs to record everything together. So let me get into the instructional motivational strategies. There's games, physical activity, movement, technology, videos, and you could go back to this section to like check to make sure that these all make sense with each section that I said they go with. Prior knowledge, I have past TEKS that described unbalanced forces as like push and pull, basically. But today we're describing why you have to have more push than pull to get an object to move. Is what they basically jumped to in 6th grade. Because in 5th, they looked at how force affects something, but they didn't really talk about how it has to be unbalanced. So for the anticipatory set, this would actually happen, let's say A day is my in-class day. So this would have happened on A day. And at the very end of class, we would have gotten ready to send them off to do their flipped portion. And what we would have done is play a game of tug of war. And so we would clear out the front of the classroom, play tug of war, and I would be like, keep this in your brain. Were they pushing or pulling on one another to win, asking them critical thinking questions and having them play this game to get them excited about what they're going to learn. And then tell them, keep this game in mind whenever you watch the videos, because we will be connecting what we learned to the game that you played. I'm going to come back to the assessments because I would rather talk about them later. So for direct teach, it will be the online portion that would be like, say, B day that they're doing at home. This would be great for COVID and things like that. But whenever you can only have part of your class in person. So I would do a direct teach video myself, and I would demonstrate balanced and unbalanced forces and define them for the student. So I would show how our prior knowledge connects through connecting it for them. I would take them back to the tug of war game, have probably like pictures that I had drawn to show them what it was like in tug of war with big arrows or smaller arrows to show the unbalanced forces. I would then use a ball to show that to make an unbalanced force, I have to push more one way than the other. But I will also show them like balanced force where I push with both hands the same amount and it makes the ball stay in place. So an unbalanced force causes change in motion, speed, and direction. And I will demonstrate all of that with the ball so that students see it rather than just hearing about it. And I'll encourage them to go get their own ball and try it out as well. So I'll show the way that speed, direction, and motion changes, all with the ball and all with demonstrations. And so there's also this really great video I found online that has a little bit different demonstrations, but it's still really great. So I have that for extended learning, especially if kids just need a little bit more to help them really grasp it. And so then I would finish up direct teach when we came into class for the next day. And I would have a Kahoot basically as a pre-assessment to see how much they learned from the flipped portion. And I would ask, what is an unbalanced force, to make sure that they understand that and how does it affect objects. And I would either have them they could write that on whiteboards, they could just call out, cold call, anything like that. And then if they're having a lot of problems with something and I notice that through the Kahoot, then I will stop the lesson and reteach those things, because flipped classrooms are only as effective as the student's learning is. My content knowledge definitions are there. My critical thinking questions are right here. And so you can read those throughout my lesson. You'll see them sprinkled throughout. For modeling, obviously, I modeled how balanced and unbalanced forces affect objects through the ball. I show them how to complete different portions of the lesson, as in how to format their notes, how to format their lab through having a form for them to use for their lab. And I'll show them how to perform the experiment. So the reason I chose a flipped classroom for this is really so that we can do a big experiment. And so guided practice is our experiment. They'll be following the instructions on that I say for them, but also I have this website right here, which it's not highlighted in blue. Here, I'll put a space so that it highlights it in blue so you can see it better. But it's this website right here. And there's lab instructions up on the board, but they're from this website, and kids can follow that website to see them online if they would like to. So basically, they use cup, water, paper towel, an egg, and different things like that to see how unbalanced forces cause everything to fall at different ways, how you have to put different unbalanced forces on things to make them fall. And they'll just be thinking about how when the forces are balanced and when everything is lined up a certain way, nothing happens. You have to put extra force on something to make the egg fall and different things like that. So as they do that, they'll be in groups of 4. They're going to make sure that there's different roles for each member in the group, and the roles are explained here. And then in those roles, they will be using a shared Google Docs to record their findings. And the Google Docs is right here. For independent practice would actually be used after closure, so I'll move to closure. So for closure, we would clean up, and then I would ask them, how does unbalanced force specifically affect the position of objects? And they'll think about how the egg moved, they'll explain it, they can read parts of their guided practice notes if they want to, and they're going to write a KWL statement for our class as an exit ticket to finish. So they would have done the K and the W at the beginning. After we did the Kahoot, they would have done the K and the W. Now they're going to do the L, and I'll make sure that everyone learns something, and if not, then we'll go over it later, because obviously we need to clear up misunderstandings. They would be sent home with this independent practice or do it right after closure. And they're basically going to draw a picture and write a sentence about what their lives would be like without unbalanced forces. It'll be done in their science journals, which their science journals will be this online Google Docs that's shared with me. So they'll be using the drawing function on Google Docs to draw their pictures and then just typing to label them. So now I'll go back up to assessment. So obviously assessment, I'm doing a pre-assessment through Kahoot, KWL by having K and W early on and then the L at the very end. I'm doing Google Docs Journal Jot to write down their KWL, their online science journals, their journals that they use during the experiment, all of it. And then summative assessment will be reviewing what they have done in their labs to make sure it was correct, and also reviewing the independent practice. So finally, my modifications. I have ELL modifications. So for everything New vocabulary terms will be on the board. Vocabulary terms are also explained using a lot of demonstrations. All vocabulary is used in context also. So all of these things together make a much stronger lesson for an ELL learner. If you use vocabulary out of context, use just oral language or written language without any sort of pictures, demonstrations, then it's very confusing. So I'm really using the scaffolding model to make sure that ELL learners put their vocabulary into context and can learn it more easily. And then group work also allows them to have a friend and a whole group of friends who are natives to the language and know the grammar structure and can help them write more clearly, give them a chance to orally express their thoughts because oral language develops first, things like that. And then sensory processing disorder. I've been in several classes that have students with sensory processing disorders, and the experiments are often very overwhelming for them. So for sensory processing disorder, I decided to give them headphones if they want to wear headphones during the class. Make sure that everything has an order. Make sure that the day is very orderly. If any of the textures bother them, they can be a cheerleader or a note taker. Those are their two other roles they can play, and they can be assigned those roles just to make sure that they are not overwhelmed. And then here are my written reflections, just justifying each strategy, talking about the strengths and weaknesses, and then there's just a couple resources to improve it. So that's everything in my lesson plan. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, that's all.